Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. Nathan's engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. If you'd like to call us, 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. Doc Rams with us, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Welcome, Rick.
Good morning. Boy, do you sound chipper.
Well, I got to tell you, Rick, I am racing around the house like I did years ago. I can't believe it. You know, I was talking with Stephen Hewer. I was talking with you. I was talking with Miles in Europe, about carbon-60. And, the thoughts. I'm on it. I am on carbon-60. I started yesterday. I took...
And look at the sound of how you're different. Wow.
I remember having a Myers cocktail over at Dr. Shealy's clinic. And I called my son, and I was feeling terrible, before the Myers cocktail. Right after the Myers cocktail, I got on the phone. I called him up and I said, "Hey, listen, when I get home, we got a lot of things to do. And by the way, I'm 30 years younger."
Yes, you probably are, actually. You just started the process to add an additional 20 years to your life from where you were going to go from that moment.
Well, I've got to tell you, I have consumed the carbon-60. Now, Miles was telling me that 20 drops is the right way to go, and I'm really cautious when I try something new. So I tried 5, and there were no adverse effects. So I added 10 more, a couple hours later. Well, this morning, so I'm at 15 drops, and this morning I took another 15 drops, and I am wired. It's almost like I've added a supercharger to my system. And that's how I feel. It's unbelievable. I've been broadcasting. I haven't said it, but the pain level when the doctors say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how's your pain? 10 is you're just going to pass out, right? 1 is it's there, but it's something you can deal with. Well, I've been at about a 7, and now I'm like between a 0 and a 1. It's unbelievable. Can it really act that quickly? Is that possible?
Actually, it's more than you can imagine, and that's why I created that diary entry that I'd like you to post to everyone. I have been writing about C60 for more than 3 years. They first appeared in Nexus magazine a couple of years back, and then Cliff High, others started talking about it, and basically, it's an interesting, the guy gives a formula, like Cliff does, on how to produce it in your home. That's 3 videos. What I'm going to do is melt them down at some point and make my own video for those that are interested. Essentially, in the previous, before the French got a hold of it, Ukraine had developed a technique for cleaning radiation. They gave lethal doses of radiation to rats and then fed them full of rainwater, and there was a 95% recovery. So then the French decided they wanted to find out what the LD50 ratio was for this. That means, being cautious and taking, and what they did, they you have to understand how that all works with different ways of studying medicine. This was about money, and so the goal was to find out exactly where that kill ratio was. And so they started feeding rats massive doses of this, to get the money. Oh yeah, if you do this amount, it'll kill them. Well, what happened is all the test rats died of normal death, and the ones being given massive doses of fluorine continued living twice as long. And what it's doing with the olive oil, that's the key, is that it's mixing and repairing telomerase, which is the aging process that we normally now measure aging with, and the fraying of it. The actual carbon buckyball is going into the gut seeking extra hydrogen. And there's another key that I haven't yet produced that I'm going to talk about next, is hydrogenization of water. That means when you have normal water and you put more hydrogen into the water, bubbling it, whatever you want to do. And that's basically what water does. Normal bulk tank water will go into the gut seeking extra hydrogen to make H3O2 and some of the other products that are in the water that make the difference in the way that delivery system with to the telomerase. It's the extra hydrogen. And if you can hydrogenate your water, this fluorine water, 3 times, I'm going to guarantee you may as much as double your lifespan. That means you could live to 200 years old. Now, I don't know that anybody wants to live that long because, like myself, my body's a wreck. I have titanium in every single limb in my body. And how I'm getting through the pain process is with cordyceps, with the extra oxygen that stops all forms of cancer and gives you extra energy. However, the water part, when it's delivered with extra hydrogen, is that something else is happening in terms of bacteria in your gut and your relationship to the future. And I'm gonna tell you, we are just beginning to understand the entire process. And so that paper, those 3 videos and the technical references, you should post those. And I would also post my Nexus articles, I gave you 2 Nexus articles, and then I gave you a 3rd article on fullerenes that is the darker side of fullerenes that nobody has discussed yet. And why I did that is because that was most probably the prototype weapon that was used on 9/11 and some of the missing aircraft. Fullerenes are carbon bonds to itself. It's one of the few elements that will form monofilament sheets of sheet carbon. It bonds to itself, and so you can have a 1 molecule thick carbon going up and down, little ricochet that is in the nanometer region. If you have 60 or 120 carbon molecules, they will form a ball, and those balls will form what we call monofilament tubules or microtubules that may be what I write about in my water section of the non-local mind, dealing with the soul and how structured water is inside these nanotubes that leave your body at the moment of death. This may be related to how memory works. This, how you have a memory and you recreate that in your brain, going backward in time, where you create your memory by putting the brain in the same holographic structure that it was at the moment of that memory. How we make mistakes by what's that called, where you composite and confabulate and have false memories. Structured water is an interesting thing, and is a chapter in my new book on the non-local mind. I should mention that article on the darker side is that instead of using exclusion zone water inside a buckyball, if you use deuterium, I design and show the targeting mechanism of how that becomes a neutron fluorine fusion bomb and is a weapon that's now being deployed everywhere in the world. It is a known technology. It is absolutely present. And one of the reasons why a couple of years ago when I was trying to write that article, I had people physically coming into my home and ruining my computers. They didn't hurt me, but they were trying to stop me from writing. And the reason is that I always used by the military, I was 20 years ahead of the technology as an instinct that I just instinctually went there. And like if you had a fork in the road. And these fusion bombs are ignited by that new form of teleportation laser by Lockheed. That's a communication system. And the trigger mechanism was Carnegie Mellon, and I actually associated an individual that was trying to discredit me and not allow me to write that article. They actually had two different local people here in Grants Pass physically come into my home to try to stop me from writing that article. And isn't it interesting? I can't find anybody to publish that work. Even Nexus Magazine, whom I'm deeply honored to be writing for, will not touch it with a 10-foot pole. And it's technically correct. Now, whether or not that's how it works, I don't know. I'm not in the laboratory. But I can tell you I'm a pretty good armchair physicist, and that's why I wrote that article, is the darker side. And I'd like to see all of those posted under fullerenes at some point so that your audience, especially Ruth Plant, who called me the other day trying to get information on that. She had watched a Cliff High thing, and it was interesting. And but that's been out for a while, and she wanted to start taking them like you are right now. And I recommend everybody that does that, including you, keep a diary, because I'm going to prove to you at some point that what's healing you is not so much the fullerene water and the oxygen from cordyceps, it's your belief in it. I'm going to suggest in that article that I just wrote, The Illusion of Reality, that we'll talk about later today if you'd like. That article is taking by storm throughout Europe right now, because I absolutely offer an argument that what we are doing right now is not reality. We are creating it with our imagination.
During the broadcast, Rick, if it's okay with you, I'll post all of this information that you've just discussed
yes,
on the website.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, class, that'll be at usaprepares.com. Rick, when we come back, can we talk about do-it-yourself C60?
Sure.
Okay, we'll talk about how to make it. We'll be right back. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with Rick. So how do we, if we're interested in making carbon-60, the same kind that I'm consuming as a supplement right now, can we make it? If so, how do we make it?
Yeah, the first thing is you want to have structured water available. And we were going to talk about Michigan. I can talk about Flint, Michigan, exactly, because I have my girlfriend's grandparents live there, and she got cancer because of the water, by the way. The purity of water is the big question. Your source of getting the correct water. Basically, you can restructure water, taking it from a water tap or a pump or, a well. It comes out, well, let's presume it's bulk. It's not structured. It's just what we would call bulk water. Just pouring it into the glass in the northern hemisphere in a clockwise rotation, or stirring it for long periods of time using a centrifuge or a magnetic stir, will restructure the water because it has become unstructured due to Coriolis forces and the spin of the Earth. Just that simple process of pouring it into a funnel that causes the water to go into the glass clockwise at this hemisphere, counterclockwise at the other side of the Earth, will restructure up to 60% of the water right out of the gate. Just as simple as that. That means pouring water in or any kind of liquid into the final cup you're going to use to drink it. Just putting it in with intent is going to change it. That's a motto. And so it's your thought that is making it happen literally. And how you do that is different for each of us. And so we're all going to, I understand just blessing the water, holy water, will kill vampires. And so, I've got to suggest that just the thought alone of the intent of what you're trying to do will make changes right out of the gate. How does that work? That's another thing I'm writing about. The idea that imagination is reality. And I'm going to say that I know I don't know, but I'm exploring the physics of it. And the more I get into it, the more I realize it's about what your intent is about. What you're trying to accomplish is what causes the changes. Now, this is another part of it. Most of us do things from a place of wounding. Our response to something is because of something that happened in our childhood. And we're coming from a place of wounding. And right out of the gate, if you try to step aside of that for a moment, that alone brings you closer to purpose, or what we call flow, where everything seems to be easy. It's you're not fighting anything anymore. That is what you're seeking in your life. That track down the middle of the road called the line. And if you can find that place, that's going to be what distinguishes you from a machine. And I didn't mean to tangent, but it's an important tangent because it is about the intent in terms of where your life expectancy comes from. And, in older periods, all of us are coming more from a place of wounding. Just think of the difference in how you were birthed over your puppy and the love that puppy got at the immediate coming out of the birth canal with his brothers and sisters compared to what you got, where they hit you, then they took you off to fingerprint you before you even got a chance to bond. It's all in metaphor. It's in metaphor. There's some sites I'm finding on how to make it. Most people will end up, like the original studies, buying it from one source or another. And I will simply say, let the buyer beware, because I cannot tell you what is a good source or a bad source. At one point it'll change, just like law enforcement. It meant well, and now it has a different agenda. And so it's all like that. You have to be very careful where your sources are.
Very good point. When we come back, Rick, can we talk about a laboratory chemistry magnetic stir?
That might burn out after a period of time. The olive oil thing required a long period, 2 weeks is how they did it. Yeah. And I would say that magnetic stir might not survive that one.
Dr. Richard Allen Miller is with his class, docram.com. If you want to go to his Facebook page, docram.com. If you'd like to go to his website and purchase some of his books and materials, that would be richardallenmiller.com. Richard, A-L-A-N, Miller.com. Rick, do-it-yourself, carbon 60. And we were talking about the magnetic stir.
Just now that gives you a place where you can get various equipment and or informations that might help get started on that. You might want to include that in the posts that I've already given you.
I certainly will.
I think the key in the stirring process is how long you do it. And you can use a centrifuge and really spin it out. Remember, the structuring of water changes when it touches something else. That's what's the miracle about water, is that when it touches anything else, it causes it to set up a memory of what it's touching. And the longer you stir it and the harder you stir it allows more of the water to touch more subsurfaces of something else in the mix that causes this change. And I think that it's, Coriolis forces aside, we're constantly destructuring everything because of where we live. The further north, the less structure it is. How's that sound?
So if we want to make carbon-60 for ourselves with olive oil, the overview is that we combine extra virgin olive oil, the best we can get, with a sourced carbon-60 powder.
That's correct. And then they both have water in them, of course, and it's that part that causes the change in both. See, the carbon, the C60 is a buckyball, and it has a surface opening between molecules of 1.4 nanometers, just small enough to allow only a single molecule of water inside it. That water that goes inside it wants to be structured. Whether it's ortho or para water, that is the dipole moment, levorotary, going this way or that way. Ortho to para is 4-to-1. Who cares? At least at this juncture, I don't know if that's significant. What I do know is that when you spin it like this, it will cause the water to touch something, and that's what causes it to become H3O2, hydrogen peroxide with an extra hydrogen molecule. Now, when you hydrogenate this by bubbling more hydrogen in later, that is what happens in the gut when structured water touches anything. It's looking for extra hydrogen to create more of the structure water that would then go into muscle and other parts of the body that seemingly cause the memory of muscle, like when you damage your muscle, how it comes back to the original shape. That's because of the memory in structured water.
Rick, let me see if I've got this right. So I looked up on eBay during the break magnetic stirrers, and let me explain what I found, and then please share with us your thoughts on this. So you have this tabletop device, and it's a small device, and it would allow you to put a glass beaker on top of this device. And then you add something that looks like a gelatin capsule, which is actually a magnet that's either glass-coated or Teflon-coated. And you put that in the bottom of this small beaker, which is the size of a mug, a coffee cup or a mug. You put that beaker-sized container on the mug-sized container, which is a beaker, on top of this magnetic stirrer. You place the magnet in there that's either glass or Teflon coated, and
I'd like to stop you right there for a moment. The Teflon or metal, you said, or glass. Okay, that is itself is significant because what you're seeking is a material that's touching that solution that is creating surface tension. And so the first question I would have asked you is, which one, Teflon or glass, has more surface tension to it?
I would say glass has more surface.
Teflon. Plastic has less surface tension than glass, and so right out of the top, I would say that glass would be more efficient. You
because
think on that level. That's what's touching the material that's causing the water to restructure.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let me see if I've got this right. So we put this magnet that's glass-coated in the bottom of this clear glass beaker.
If that glass was not glass, it was tellurium. Do you know what happens to water when it touches tellurium? It has enough surface tension, it will crawl up the glass at least upwards of 3 inches before it'll fall over the other side.
Oh.
Did you know that that's what you're seeking, is the material that gives you the most surface tension, what you would call surface tension, where there's an arching of the water going up the side of something. And now glass is far superior, but that's why now a lot of people are using a metal because it's opaque, that blocks the sun in destructuring and structuring the water, and it causes more surface tension than even glass does. Now, metal itself won't work unless it's a magnet. So it doesn't have to have a coating, maybe. Maybe it's the metal itself. See, it's a way of thinking. And just taking a spoon and putting it inside the glass and stirring it clockwise will make a difference.
Rick, as you say this, I have very fond memories of my grandfather having his morning cup of coffee, and he would put a small amount of sugar in it, and I could hear the spoon. Let me see if I can do it. I could hear the spoon going
Yep.
like that as he stirred his coffee clockwise. And I remember that. It was not counterclockwise, it was clockwise. And was he structuring the water in the coffee by doing that?
By instinctively doing that, yes, he was. And if you lived in Australia, you'd probably go counterclockwise.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now going back to this magnetic stirrer that you can buy on eBay, there are a couple different kinds. There are different features within these two different kinds, but one is a motor gear driven magnetic stirrer, which has a magnet on a wheel that goes under this the surface of this box that you set your beaker on, and that magnet will move in a circular pattern, and it will cause the magnet above it in the beaker to follow the magnet below it as it rotates. Okay, so that's one kind. The other kind is an electronic magnet that moves the stirring magnet, which is called a flea. It moves the flea without having any moving parts within the magnetic stirrer itself. So that's the preferred kind, according to my research, my very quick research. But you can buy one of these things from between $29 and $120. So, Rich, do you have a preference as to which one you like?
I haven't researched that part yet. Stay tuned. I know that the material that's touching the medium you're stirring is essential.
Okay.
And the direction it's moving is essential. I don't know about the magnetic and electromagnetic fields. Stay tuned on that. I would think that your thought processes of thinking you're right is essential.
Okay, so...
Doesn't matter then. Do you understand what I've just said? What matters is what you believe is happening.
So where does the water come in with this? Because I know that we've got olive oil. We're going to find a source
the water comes out of a tap, or comes out of a well, or comes out of your Berkey. Yeah. When you take it out of your Berkey, have it go through a funnel into the glass, the beaker, whatever, clockwise, and that alone will begin the restructuring process.
Okay, so is the plan to take the carbon 60 that's mixed with olive oil, like 20 drops on in your mouth, swish it around for a minute, and then swallow it, and then follow that by structured water? Is that the plan?
Well, yeah, because when you slush it in your mouth, you're essentially doing sublingual, which means it's going into the cell even differently than swallowing it through the gut.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I've been doing. And I was talking with one of our instructors, and I didn't ask him if it would be okay if I said this on air, but I was talking to one of our instructors who is doing this and has done it, and he says that he swishes it in his mouth, and the reason he does that is he wants it to hit his brain first.
Well, and, that's... I'm not sure that the brain is what you think it is and why you want to hit that first. I think the gut is possibly more important than the brain, but that's why they do sublingual. But, thinking the upper brain is more important. Now they're starting to realize that memory may not be in the brain, but in the structured water being slushed around your mouth. That's interesting, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I keep going back to this beaker being stirred by the flea or the magnet within the beaker. And here's my question. So, Rick, if I take a funnel and I use a ProPure water system or a Berkey water system, and I've got a carbon block filter filtering the water, and I pour it into a beaker, okay, into a beaker the size of a coffee cup, and I pour it in so that it swirls around in a clockwise fashion, and I structure the water that way. Am I structuring the water even more if I spin it at 1,200 RPM?
Yes,
clockwise,
because you're touching more impurities in the water. Each time that water touches something, it restructures it.
So I would be creating a greater,
a
greater percentage of H.
Over a unit period of time, that water is touching more things.
Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us, and we're talking about structured water. And I'm on I'm on this bent where I'm trying to understand it as best I can, and it looks like I'd like to make H3O2, structured water. I'd like to add more hydrogen to the water so that I can improve the effectiveness of the C60 that I'm consuming. So I'm looking at, on the internet right now, I'm looking at these magnetic stirrers, and you can get them from, let's say, $29 to $120 or more if you'd like. But it looks like you can get one for about $60 that'll do the job. So here's the question, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. So if I take a beaker, that's the size of a coffee cup, and I pour some ProPure filtered water in there that's gone through activated carbon, and I get the purest drinking water that I can find, put it in this beaker, fill it about half full, and then stir it clockwise, at maybe 500 RPM or so for a few minutes. Am I improving the structuring of that water to the point where it's almost as good as I can get it?
You want to stir it for longer than a few minutes.
Okay. How long do I want to stir it?
Well, the original studies were 2 weeks.
I'll be thirsty before then.
Well, of course you will. But that means you have a lot of beakers going.
Okay.
Well, you get it set up so that you've got a process.
Yeah. Okay. So and by
the way,
$50.
It's those little habits that you do every morning that set up the PGO waves in your brain and your habits and addictions. That is the little games you play with your rituals of how you do what you do in pouring or making your coffee, pouring your cereal into the bowl, how you do the sugar before the milk, whatever. Those little habits are also part of the whole process. Believe this or not, that is what my latest article in Nexus is about. The habits that we do, and by changing those habits, you change your addictions, as simple as that. And let me tell you the fine line between an addiction and a tool. Very, very tiny, small gray area called the 7.5% solution of Sherlock Holmes.
Hey, Rick, I was reading about some of the benefits of hydrogen water. It's an antioxidant. It prevents brain damage. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Hydrogen water may improve mood disorders. Hydrogen water.
It does everything. Listen, that's what I'm trying to tell you. It changes everything.
It reduces muscle fatigue, motor deficits, muscle degeneration.
0-point energy. The sound current, the voice of the silence, the lost chord. It's all I looked up in metaphor, and this technology has been in previous epochs. In fact, it is how sound relates to words and how our way of communicating has energy.
I got to tell you, Rick, I am. It almost appears like I have ADHD in the studio today. I am looking around. I know you can't.
Well, I can see how that works with all that magnetic fields around you. That's worse than 5G. By the way, that's why everybody's sick, not the flu. It's this new technology they're using on cell phones everywhere. That is what's causing everybody's flu symptoms. News flash.
We were going to talk about that today, too. This dirty electricity causing electromagnetic fields. But let me just say this very quickly and see if you agree. I looked up structured water. How long does it keep? How long can you store it? You can store it structured for up to 300 feet in straight pipes, 7 to 10 days in direct sunlight, 30 days in a plastic container, and 45 or more days in an environment that's calm without stress in natural surroundings.
Yeah. Holy water.
Oh.
Well.
Okay. Your thoughts?
I just gave them to you as humor.
Okay, great.
Let the buyer beware.
We're going into a break. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Doc Rams with us, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. If you'd like to go to his website, richardallenmiller.com, richardalanmiller.com. Rick, thank you for sending me this link. It's from thebigwobble.org. It's dirty electric. EMF causes cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and suicide, and is the disease of our 21st century civilization. Your thoughts?
I agree completely. That's why I posted it, sent it to you for discussion.
Okay, so here's a really great quote as part of this article. And here's the quote. Facts don't cease to exist just because they're ignored. Aldous Huxley. Facts don't cease to exist just because they're ignored. Absolutely true. And so electromagnetic frequencies is what we're talking about.
Yeah, we're an electromagnetic entity, and we have dosimetry. That means LD50 ratios in our response to things. And this 5G tower crap that's happening right now, who authorized that?
Not me, not you.
Well, how did that happen that it's being allowed everywhere in invasive situations where some power companies are trying to insist that it's their right to put a smart meter on your house? It's not.
Yeah. They threatened to call the cops on me when I tried to prevent them from putting that smart meter on our house.
It'd be interesting to see how far that nonsense would go.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you,
I'm prepared to stand my ground. This is my right. What happened to the rights of a homeowner in terms of their home and how they want to run their ship? Mm-hmm. What's happening to America right now in terms of that? We've been hijacked.
We have been hijacked. I did what I could. I ran twice for the board of directors of the electric cooperative. I wanted those who wanted their smart meters taken out to get that choice. That will not happen. I've been prevented from being a member of the board of directors.
Put a Faraday cage around it. See how they like that.
I've got one around it. And here's how I did it. Literally, class. What I did was I took a 3-pound coffee can, and when you buy them, and I'm talking about the metal ones, okay, not the plastic Folgers, red ones or green ones. I'm talking about the metal cans, and they come with a resealable plastic lid. What I did was I took the coffee can. I said, that's pretty close to the size to go over that meter, and I put it over the meter, but it would fall down. It wouldn't stay on. So what I did was I put the plastic lid back on, and I cut almost all of the center out of the plastic lid. I left about a ½ an inch all around it. And then I put little kerf cuts in that. Put the remaining part of the lid that was left after I cut a center disc out of the plastic resealable coffee lid. I put that back on the can, and with the kerf cuts, it made a nice, tight, snug fit around the glass part of the meter. And I put it on. And I said about 3 years ago on the air that I did that, and, that's because I was so concerned that these meters look so darn expensive. I wanted to protect the meter from, being hit with softballs or whatever we were throwing in the backyard. And so that's what I did. I put a coffee can on it. Now, it's kind of rusty, but...
the bandwidth on that is such that it's not going to be able to do it all. It'll get some of that crap out of
right.
your environment, but not all of it.
That's right. And then, class, if you want to do something pretty terrifying, all you have to do is get a tri-field meter, and you can get them on the internet. You can get them right from the manufacturer. The inventor is one of our instructors, and I'll give him a call and get him back on the air. But you can take a tri-field meter and bring it near your electrical meter, your smart meter. You will not believe the amount of electromagnetic radiation that comes out.
That's how you use a tri-field meter, is to determine where you want to put your bed and your head at night.
Yeah. And unfortunately, Rick, many people who are in class today listening to us are not in a position to change where their electric meter is. They aren't, because, well, number one, I'll bet you many houses today have an electric meter on the other side of the bedroom wall. What I mean is, on the wall, on the outside of the house, there's probably a bedroom, and the meter is right there. So if you had a drill that had a 5-inch long bit, and you drilled a hole, you could drill a hole right through that wall and get right to the electric meter. It's like that close. And then if you want to get a little more frightened, take that tri-field meter and measure the electromagnetic radiation around your breaker panel. You won't believe that either. And what I've learned is that Romex wires, I'm talking about the kind of wiring that's in most houses, has a plastic sheath. It's usually yellow in jacket color or white in jacket color. White would be a 15 amp wire, which is 14 gauge, or yellow would be a 20 amp wire, which is 12 gauge. And what happens in this jacket of the Romex cable is there are 3 wires. One of them is insulated with black plastic, one of them is insulated with white plastic, and one of them has like a paper insulation around it, and that's the ground wire. Now, it seems to me that when I measure that, there's not a lot of electromagnetic radiation coming out of the wires per se, because I think the combination of the parallel running of the hot wire, which is black, the white wire, which is the neutral or the common, and the ground wire, they seem to have the ability to counteract the electromagnetic radiation from the wires. But when you get to the electrical breaker panel, where the insulation or the jacket is removed from those wires and the wires separate, the white wires from the black wires from the ground wires, when they get separated, that's when you get an enormous amount of electromagnetic radiation. That's my opinion. I can't prove it, but I think it's true. No,
it is correct. That's what insulation is for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if you want to see, right, and if you want to see a smaller result of that, you can take that tri-field meter and you can bring it, follow the electrical wires in your wall, through the sheetrock, and you'll find very little electromagnetic radiation. But when you get to the wall switches, where the light switches are, behind those plastic wall switch plates, you'll find there's a lot more electromagnetic radiation.
Yeah.
Right. So you're absolutely right. And how do you fix that? Well, here's what I did, Rick, and maybe you can comment on this. You've been to our house many times. Well, what you didn't see is behind the paint on our sheetrock walls. Same kind of walls that just about everybody has. What I did was I went to eBay and I bought some metal dust. And it's like the consistency of flour, baking flour. And I bought 5 pounds of it. I bought copper. And I mixed it in with the primer of the paint before we painted the walls. And I knew where all the wires were because I put them there myself. So they were in an organized pattern according to a standard, if you will, certain height above the floor, that kind of thing. Well, I painted the walls with this primer that had copper dust mixed into it, and I over-painted the areas where the wires were to try to keep some of that electromagnetic radiation from coming out of the walls. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes, and Dr. Beal, B-E-A-L, Dr. Beal in Florida, and you can use Dr. Beal, Florida as a way to pull up his work, has pioneered that area of LD50 ratios of different bandwidths and their effects on organs in the body. His research is foundation work and would give you further detail on why certain things want to be more filtered than others because of their toxicity.
And I'm thinking that I might have been better off with iron dust.
Well, you're creating a Faraday cage of sorts. It won't shield out microwave, but, well, microwave, it's a bandwidth. It has to do with the wavelength and having the particle from one metal piece to another. And some microwave bands are smaller than the banding in metal, so it goes right through certain kinds of metals like that. That's why Faraday cages are only as good as the bandwidth they're shielding.
I was at a friend's house who happens to be an instructor, and he and his wife and I were talking, and they have cell phones. And they live in a farmhouse, and where they are, they don't get cell reception very well in their farmhouse. And I said, that's great. That's great.
That's exactly correct, the metaphor.
Yeah, it's great because they're in an area that the cell tower electromagnetic radiation can't seem to see their farmhouse very well. They're in a valley, and dip in the ground.
But have you noticed how all these towers are appearing everywhere now?
Yeah.
Who authorized that? Why is that happening?
All right, let me tell you a story about that. So I had a friend, he's now dead, and here's what happened. There was a microwave tower, a cell tower, across the road from his farm. And I said to him, there's a microwave tower across from your farm. Because he was really sick, really, really sick. And he was failing. And he said, yeah, I wanted to get that tower on my property. I thought, are you kidding? I didn't say that. I just looked at him. He said, yeah, I gave my wife $500 to go bribe the guy who was going to put the tower up so they could move it onto my farm. He wanted that tower on his
Good.
farm.
I let him have it. How about the movie Neighbors?
I haven't seen that.
That's John Belushi.
Okay. Let's talk more about this technology when we come back. Class, we're talking about electromagnetic radiation with Dr. Richard Allen Miller. I'm very, very concerned about it. I'm doing everything I can to minimize my exposure to it. I tried not to travel to the cities where there's 3G, 4G, and 5G currently being deployed. When we bought our house, I moved as far away from cell towers as possible, but the problem that I have is our ignorant neighbors in this village think cell phone service is just the greatest thing, even though they know that they are being snooped on, spied on, recorded. Their audio is being picked up, stored forever by the government corporation and the Verizons and the U.S. Cellulars and the AT&Ts and the rest of it. Even though I believe all that's happening, even though they know that it's happening, they are still not willing to put their cell phones down. They're not willing to leave home without them. They're not willing to not use their cell phone because they're so darn addictive and so convenient. And they are addicted to these ridiculous texts that they feel that they've got to have, because if they don't get a message within every 5 minutes or so from somebody else letting them know that they're being thought of, they feel lonely and become more depressed. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. But I'm doing everything I can to reduce the electromagnetic radiation in my life, including having my computers as far away from me as I possibly can, having the monitors as far away from me as I possibly can, having all of these electronic devices physically as far away from me as possible. And class, if you take electronic measuring instruments like the tri-field meter, you will find electromagnetic radiation with all of these devices, whether they be a Blu-ray player, a television, a CRT-type television, a flat-screen television, a keyboard. All of these devices that have little processors in them all emit electromagnetic radiation. No question about it. Even an AM table radio. And one of the things that we can't seem to get to work very well around us is I can't get a television signal over the air very well. That's good news, right? I can't get a radio station very well over the air either. Now, if I go out in my car or truck, I can turn on a radio station. We get a few of them out here. But we're so far out that it's not cost effective for a radio station or a television station to send their signal this far, which is really good. But you mentioned more towers going up. Well, what's happened, class, is once they get a tower put up on somebody's property, they'll rent that for, let's say, $500 a month. The landowner will rent that space for $500 a month. The life expectancy of these towers is about, at the most, 20 years. At the end of the 20 years, the landowner gets stuck with the tower, which will be obsolete. They get stuck with that tower. If they want to take it down, it's up to the landowner to take it down. Now, how much do you think it's going to cost to take one of those towers down? It's going to cost thousands and thousands of dollars. So the owners of the land aren't thinking about that. They aren't thinking about the dangers that they are exposing themselves and their neighbors to. They don't.
Well, it's like immediate gratification.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like, a Dorito corn chip that you can't just eat one.
Mm-hmm. It is about immediate gratification. You look at a young person, and they keep looking at their cell phones, hoping, they're not thinking that they're hoping, but they're hoping that someone is going to text them and say, hey, look at what my puppy just did.
That is where the addiction starts, right there. That is absolutely a form of addiction. Mm-hmm. And watch the people driving and looking at their cell phones.
Well, that was something I wanted to talk to you about as well. In Oregon, aren't you the number one state for people getting run over?
Yeah, we have the highest pedestrian incident hit and run in the nation. And mm-hmm. It's, like Michigan, and I showed you that one article where they're in, where was it? Grand Rapids. They are now putting a law where, the person in a crosswalk has the right of way because of their high incident rate of accidents with pedestrians walking and cars hitting them. And I would directly say 50% of those are because of distraction, of loud noises, which, by the way, will cause cancer. Just loud noise situations are toxic. And there's a movie that John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd made called Neighbors. It's absolutely where they're next door to each other with a phone tower going right down through the middle of the property. And watch how the freakiness goes from there just because of the electromagnetics. They made a comedy out of it.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back. Neighbors with John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd. Don't you miss John Belushi? Wasn't he great?
He was the funniest man. Cheeseburger.
So, Rick, we're talking about electromagnetic radiation, absolutely dangerous, and you were talking about the LD50 ratio, LD50. That's the lethal dosage. Can you tell us what that means for those who are new in class today?
It means that level will kill 50% of the Americans getting exposed to it.
Yeah.
That's what lethal dose 50 means. 50% of the America that gets exposed to that are dead.
Rick, I haven't been to a big city in a while, but the last time I was there, I took an iPad, and sometimes when I travel, I'll take an iPad with me. It was given to me by a company that thought I should have one, and otherwise, I wouldn't spend $500
They can
on an
monitor
iPad.
you then. Smartphones are toxic, and that's why I carry a track phone, a disposable, just like in the movies, track phone. I'm finished with it, I dump it, and I run. I can get my miles later on a new track phone if I need to.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's where I was going with that. So I was in a waiting room of in a building, and I just opened up this iPad to see how many different Wi-Fi connections there were. There were 19. 19. And I was at our daughter's house, and I opened it up, and I could get at least 9 or 10 or maybe 12, 13 of her neighbors. You know, I could see them on, not that I was trying to hack them, I just wanted to see how many signals there were, and that's on the East Coast. What I'm saying is that I'll bet you in a big city there'll be hundreds of Wi-Fi networks that you can find with an iPad.
How about putting a piece of tape? You know, my tech support, Russell Renge, he puts a piece of tape over the camera when he's not using it. He puts a plug
tape
in the speaker jack when he's not using it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and class, what we're talking about, I saw a demonstration of this many years ago, and what they were saying is, let's go look, and you could go and hop onto some student's notebook computer in their dormitory room, and there's the camera, and the camera is usually facing the students, and you can see what they're doing. As a matter of fact, in the city of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the educators, the public training camp educators, gave notebook computers to students to take home to help them with their studies, right? Allegedly. Well, what they found out was that the educational employees were monitoring what was going on in the students' homes through the camera and microphones on those notebook computers. Yeah, so let's
It gets more sinister than that even. I had a friend visiting me. He was downstairs in the library, and he was sound asleep when his computer turned itself on and started taking pictures of him.
Mm-hmm. So if you've got one of these devices and you've got them powered on and you've got your cell phone charging on your nightstand,
now then we can talk about Wi-Fi and how you want to go wireless in your home. Good luck with that.
Well, they want us to go wireless. Rick, I'm moving the studio from where it is now in our farmhouse to another room, actually into the dining room.
Move it out to the barn.
Here's what I did. Well, yesterday I ran 4 network cables. Why? Because I don't want wireless. Can I have wireless here at the farm? Absolutely. All I have to do is go into any computer here on the farm, type in an IP address for the router, and say, enable Wi-Fi. It's as simple as that. That's all I have to do. However, I don't want Wi-Fi in my house. I do not want a smart refrigerator. I do not want a smart television. I do not want a smart dishwasher or any other device that's called smart. Smart means spy. Smart means they're going to watch you. And if you have a smart television, there's a camera and a microphone, in many cases, in those smart appliances, those TVs. And when you watch a TV, you usually sit in front of it. Okay? Well, if it's got a camera, it can look at you. And if it's connected to the internet, heck, if you've got Amazon Prime or you've got Netflix, you're connected to the internet. Well, your smart TV can monitor what you say and monitor what you're doing.
Now at Amazon, they're monitoring everybody's behavior in the warehouse.
Yeah, and that's what we know. What about what we don't know? Literally. I mean, back in the 60s and in the 50s, researchers working for the United States government were unleashing radioactive dust in the air, following its path to see what it would do to children in public school across the street in cities like St. Louis. No kidding. That actually happened. It happened. And so how does this radiation affect children? Well, let's find out. Let's give them a dose of it. Let's find out how electromagnetic radiation is killing people. Let's give them a dose of it. Now, who listening to this broadcast does not have a smart meter? Is there anybody? I hardly think so. I hardly think so. And if you don't have one, your neighbor does. And how about these houses that are, 20 feet apart from each other? Heck, your neighbor's smart meter's aimed at your house, and yours is aimed at his house. And you've got a power transformer on the pole within 125 feet of your house. And there's electromagnetic radiation come from that. And they're up and down the street. And then you've got the cell towers. And then you've got the high tension lines. It's everywhere. And then in your homes, those wires in your walls are acting as antennae for the smart meters on your home. So what do? Maybe we should round up the CEOs of these electric companies and try them for intentional homicide. Now, I think that maybe the term and practice of drawing and quartering people while they're still alive, is cruel and unusual. But I think it's fitting for these kinds of crimes against humanity. And how do we shut these down? Once these darn things are deployed all over, how do you stop them? How do you imagine? Okay, let's extrapolate a little further. Let's get on the bus, or let's get in a subway car, or let's get in a train car. And if you're crazy enough to get in an Amtrak train car, and who next to you, across from you, or in the same train car or bus doesn't have a cell phone? If you don't have one, you're the only one. And they're all cooking you at about 1.9 watts each. That's what's happening. So while you're sitting in that subway on that 1 hour commute or that train commute into the big city so you can make the big bucks, you are cooking yourself. You're in a microwave oven. And where are the microwaves coming from? All the cell phones around you. How about being in a subway car where you've got the seats and then you've got these poles from floor to ceiling so you can hang on, and you're standing.
What do you
bumping
think that
into the
does
person
to the
next to you?
structure of water in your body? How does a microwave work in heating something up?
Well, it rubs the molecules together so they get hot.
What do you think that does to the structure?
Kills it.
There it is.
And the amazing thing, the most amazing thing about the stupidity of people is that we were lulled into the convenience of cell phones, and we are paying $100 a month for our own demise. So, class, if you look around, can you name someone who's died in the last 2 months of cancer? Of course you can. Of course you can. So every couple of months, there's another one. There's another one. They're dropping like flies. So is that natural causes? Really? Is cancer a natural cause of death now? It's everywhere. And that's one of the reasons why I live on a farm in the middle of nowhere. I am trying my best to get away from this stuff. Here's another example. Rick, this is going to sound far-fetched, but it's absolutely true. When I worked at the bank, we had these file cabinets, and we had metal desks. And, some of them were gray, some of them were black, some of them were tan. And, to make them all look a little nicer, we had them spray painted. So they said, all right, we're going to spray paint, these cabinets over the weekend. And so, you can't come into work over the weekend because they are going to be spraying, the contractor. So the contractor used an electrostatic spray with paint. Did a fabulous job. And what this does is they put a wire to a charger, if you will, on the filing cabinet, and then they can spray it, and the paint goes right to it. It's attracted to it. It's kind of like a magnet for paint. Works really, really well. Well, we were told to turn off our computers and all that. Well, one guy forgot on the other end of the room. And when I talk about a room, I'm talking like 400 or 500 feet long. Well, one guy forgot to turn his computer monitor off. That spray flew across the room and painted his computer monitor. That's the kind of electromagnetic energy we're talking about. Now, that's just one computer monitor. That was CRT back in the 80s. That's one computer monitor that was left on. Now, what happened to employees like me and you when you were in rooms with hundreds of these computer monitors, let alone the computers, let alone the power lines, let alone the fluorescent lights, right? And all the other magnetic stuff. What happened to us? I think we were cooked. Rick, can we come back? Can you comment on that? Rick, do you have any comments about what I said about being cooked at the workplace?
I'm going to go lay down and take a nap. I got to think about all of this. It's kind of scary to realize.
Yeah, how about this? UVA, UVB, and UVC. Our atmosphere is not protected.
Yeah, we've got a problem going out in the daylight now. How many people notice that you now need, during sunlight, during daylight driving, sunglasses?
Yeah.
That's what's happened. Yeah. Our sun is changing. The media is reporting different parts of it. Just the creepy thing that suspicious observers said regarding the earthquake in Japan, I was drawn directly to Elon Musk and what was not shown on that space flight 2 days ago. If that's posted on Facebook.
Okay, what was not shown?
Why don't you I'm not sure what it is. Something was removed that is not part of the public's knowledge that went into the sun and created something else. And look what it did to Japan with that 6.2 earthquake. They're doing things that they're not disclosing them to the public, and even people like suspicious observers is noting it now. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's very, very dangerous times. And
tomorrow
I think we've been invaded. Something is terraforming us.
Tomorrow there's going to be a flyby. An asteroid about 60 feet long, 62 feet long is going to do a flyby at about 1/5 the distance between the Earth and the Moon. I'm either they're being reported more, or I'm noticing them more, or they are occurring more frequently. Rick, are you noticing the same thing?
Well, there's new planets appearing in our solar system that do not belong to us from our neighbor, Nibiru. There's one out by Neptune right now that Saturn, that Caltech is talking about. Where did it come from? Out past the Oort cloud. Yeah, we have debris, and actually, the Earth does not circle the sun. It follows it as an ellipse as the sun moves through Jupiter's trail of debris. Jupiter has been emitting a bunch of stuff, and we are now going right through that debris, and why you're going to notice aberrations in everything, including our sun.
Class, I'd just like to mention this very quickly. There's a 2-day conference, a regional conference, March 8 and 9, West Plains, Missouri, and it's bringing back the American small farm. I'm going to give you a phone number, 417-293-0590, 417-293-0590.
May I say one thing on that?
Yes.
I am going to Vermont this summer to teach the new small family farm for the 21st century as a ebook or online course at Sterling College, which is an agroforestry hands-on college with graduate students. And I'm going to be going there in Vermont this summer to teach some courses across the country with a demonstration farm right there on site. And the second course will be on forest farming and how to, the next direction in wildcrafting. I wished I could be invited to something like this and offer workshops in small farm agriculture, because I do not know anybody with my knowledge base in that field.
I know the gal who's putting this on. I'm going to be talking with her right after the broadcast. It might be too late for this one, but maybe the next one.
Well, a workshop where they bring me in before or after the event, and I offer an 8-hour intensive on what to do to include an herbal pharmacy on site, growing your own heart medicine.
What's better than that? Now, you've got some books that address that, don't you?
I have a 9-volume encyclopedia on alternative agriculture. I have The Potential of Herbs as a Cash Crop, Native Plants of Commercial Importance, and a host of other alternative agricultural things, including 360 PDFs on how to grow specific crops on down to the ethics in marketing.
Okay, and that's available on your website, richardallenmiller.com, right?
Yes, sir. Well, okay. And I'm also, should mention, I'm seeking investment patrons because I have 30 manuscripts ready for press right now, and I don't have the cash to put them in print yet.
Rick, we're out of time. richardallenmiller.com. Thanks so much, Rick. See you next week.